notification.
Last time I didn't, so let's see if it's gonna be nice to me today.
Didn't.
No, I promise
Give
I've
it a second.
subscribed.
Give it a second. Let's see if it comes through. Well, it shows we're live on YouTube. I saw that.
Hmm.
Weird. Maybe I got to re-click the bell sign on my own
I know.
profile.
Maybe my notifications are whack.
Maybe.
Did you guys order the new whey and BCA flavors?
We haven't for the gym, but I did.
Well, it's probably good that you try it. Make sure. I feel like if you know what it tastes like and
Oh,
people are asking for a specific flavor like that, then you can recommend it. But
I'm stoked
so
for the
excited.
honey peanut butter. Oh, yeah. Peanut butter is a problem with me. Anything peanut
If you
butter.
have the clean carbs too, it tastes so good together.
Oh, chocolate peanut butter mixed with honey peanut butter. Now we're talking. That's dangerous.
No, not the post. The clean carbs, the sweet potato
Oh,
pie.
so sweet potato. Sorry.
I
Saying
did
the post.
I did
Oop, camera.
okay, I know I was like I did a wholesale video, like informational video on our clean carbs a few days ago. Because that's and we've talked about it. Sometimes
Hmm.
I have a hard time remembering what I've done and what I haven't because I've done everything here. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I get that.
so but yeah, I just kind of dove right back into clean carbs, and it was seriously every time I look into these supplements, I learn something new. Like
Hmm.
even though we did a whole podcast episode on it, I'm like, what?
That's
I
the
didn't even
thing. We're
know that.
always
I
learning.
know, it's crazy. All right, you want to do the
All right,
intro?
guys.
You're
Sure.
good at it. You've done it 1,000 times.
Welcome, guys, to Grit Daily Dose with E Squared. I really want to try to be a one-stop shop for you guys. All things, well, really science and experience-based knowledge on things like nutrition, exercise, uh, lifestyle, and then also supplementation. Really to bring you an honest education, not bias, to help you along the way towards any goals that you guys might have. Today, we are talking about a really hot topic, not only that I've experienced in my gym, and I'm sure Emma has experienced not only in with Wolverine, but I'm sure in her gym as well, and that we see blasted all over
Social
the
media, Google.
and that's sugar and sugar substitutes. So today we're going to tackle the topic of specifically sugar substitute or non-nutritive sweeteners. Um, Emma, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. First
Tackle
things
it.
first,
Time I see fit.
you will not die if you use an if you use a sugar substitute. I promise. If you can't listen to me, then look up BioLane on Instagram and listen to him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's great. If you want to put his Instagram handle in the comments, maybe, and then or
Mm-hmm.
maybe in the video below it, like on YouTube, that'd be a great resource for people to go to when it comes to things like that, and just supplements. He knows a lot about it.
Yeah.
So that's another resource other than us that you guys definitely should check out and follow along. He's a very like no bullshit kind of person. Just tells you what's right, and just
Yep.
the
Likes
science
going
behind a lot of
after
things.
topic zealots.
Yeah.
Loves going out people who are extreme.
Yes, yeah. Like today, I watched his video today that was on just like hardcore diets and certain types of lifestyles and things like that. Like an influencer literally died from malnutrition because she was just doing like a raw vegan diet, and so he just talked about on the video about like how sad it is that these things are like so popular on the internet. And it can be so hard, especially for people with eating disorders over time. Like you just
Mm-hmm.
feel like it just closes you and boxes you in, and you feel like you can't eat anything, right? And there's definitely been days where I've literally walked out of Walmart in tears before because I'm like, there's just poison in everything, and I can never eat anything. And that's of course me being hangry and just wanting food, right? That I can just eat without any worries. And sure, that's, you know, a common thing and a common issue, but um, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I think it's helpful to find resources that you trust and you can
Mhm.
rely on. So let's kind of dive in. I took a lot of this information from our blog post on swolverine.com. If you didn't know, we have a very extensive blog with all sorts of information from how to do a hamstring curl to is sucralose genotoxic, right? So we kind of have this big wide range of information. The reason I used our blog post is there's a few reasons. They cite clinical studies very clearly, so it's very easy for me to go to clinical studies directly from the blogs, read, learn a little bit more, and then I didn't have to. The other reason was I didn't want to Google it because I knew on Google there would be a lot of fear mongering media that would be like, you're
Mhm.
gonna die, or like, you know, don't eat too much of this, or why does this make you fat, or like just such ridiculous topics. So I'll make
Yeah.
sure we provide these blog links too, so then people can look into it themselves and get access to a lot of those clinical studies. So let's kind of dive into. I wanted to talk about two things: sucralose, which is basically Splenda, it's the same thing, and then
Yeah.
ACE K, which is the full word. I have it spelled out so I don't forget how to pronounce it. Acesulfame potassium. So those are the other
Mhm.
kind of thing I wanted to talk about. But let's start with sucralose. So it's kind of just talk about what it is and then go into the studies and how a lot of the clinical studies that have named it dangerous and genotoxic have been disproven. So sucralose is actually made from real sugar by replacing the hydrogen oxygen group with a chlorine atom, resulting in a sweetener that is 600 times sweetener than conventional sugar. So, reason that
Mhm.
it's used a lot, especially in supplements, is because it tastes good. So,
Yep.
um, it's the most commonly used sweetener because it has the most sugar-like taste. It has no bitterness, and it lasts in high temps and has a long shelf life. So you can only imagine why people would opt to use sucralose
Kind
frequently
of
or
like the
Splenda
most
frequently.
versatile
Mm-hmm. And it's just
of all of
easier,
them
less
and the
stress,
sweetest.
right?
So why not?
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah.
Um, so sucralose have been subjected to many extensive short term, which is an important thing, and long term studies. So there is important when you're looking at studies, you want to look at like the time over a period, how long things have been studied, right? Because if someone's only studied the effects of something for 6 months and they say it affects you for the rest of your life, do we know whether that's true or not, right? So sucralose has been subjected to very extensive studies over a short period and long period of
Hmm.
time, and with both humans and animals, right? Um, a lot of studies can just include animals, and then you don't actually know if it affects you as a human because you are not an animal. Um, so, and none of these studies have been found to pose or have demonstrated any significant risks to humans. So, studies have concluded that sucralose is safe. Your body doesn't acquire any calories from the ingestion of sucralose,
Hmm.
and most sucralose remains unchanged through the gastrointestinal tract. So, that's a good sign, right? You don't want it to turn into some weird chemical, right? That's probably not a good sign. So, for the
No.
most part, everything remains the same. Um, so, since its introduction 30 or 25 years ago, all studies and reviews conducted by the FDA and the European Food Safety Authority have shown that sucralose is safe for consumption and doesn't have any neurological, carcinogenic, or adverse effects. So that's something you'll hear a lot is like something's carcinogenic. Well, sucralose has been
Hmm.
found to have none effects of that nature. Um, no non-sugar substitutes can be extremely beneficial and helpful to those who might have diabetes or suffer from obesity, since it does not spike the blood sugar, glucose, or insulin. So many people have come
See,
to
that's
us being like, "That's a huge one." And so,
that's a
tag in on
huge
this one, EJ.
misconception. I get
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So like I do get clients where they come in, they believe that sucralose or other like non-nutritive sweeteners affect your blood glucose or your insulin levels like
Hmm.
sugar and other carbohydrates, when really that's just a big misconception.
Hmm.
Like when consumed by itself, sucralose or again other non-nutritive sweeteners don't affect either in the short term or even the long term um, the your actual glucose or blood sugar levels. Now, the caveat with that, if it's severe high doses over a long period of time, can have damages.
Yeah.
Can
Anything,
can
anything
can not will
could
can
possibly.
cause uh, cause these effects with having proper glycemic control within your body. But again, that's like the intake of like well over probably 200, 300 milligrams a day of this
Mhm.
stuff every single day.
Without stop
Um,
for years. I mean, it's people who tell me like, "Oh, Coke can kill you." It's like the people who have died from consumption of Diet Coke probably had like 12 a day for like 3 decades. Like there was
yeah,
probably
yeah,
no moderation at all. And so in one of the notes that I had made too were like, we have to remember that more than 60% of Americans exceed the recommended daily intake for sugar. And so if we can
mhm,
find a substitute for just straight up sugar constantly in someone's life, like that has to be better at some point, right? Um, so I just feel like that's an easy thing to forget is that like if people don't possibly have that Diet Coke
mhm,
option, like what else are they going to go for? Because most likely they're going to find something else, and it might not be a better option. So
right.
because we can all say, oh, just make them not eat Coke, but that's or drink Coke or eat McDonald's, and it's like
Hmm.
that's just not realistic.
Right.
Like we
And
can't get them to do that.
exactly.
So
And it's always usually in the like people aren't doing it to hurt themselves
yeah.
or like to cause a negative effect. It's that most people that are consuming in excess of this stuff is in an effort to try to lose weight.
Hmm.
And that's awesome. I love the fact that you guys are trying to lose weight, but there's better ways to go about it.
Yeah. And
Um,
sometimes, like, a lot of people are like, well, it's because they're not educated. And sometimes that's a big thing, right? Like, they don't really know the science behind it. But
mhm,
a lot of times, too, there's just things like mentally and physically that you have to dig into that could be a reason for people's food habits, right? So, like, that's exactly why they have like eating disorders under the mental illness category, right? Like, mental
right.
or eating disorders is the biggest cause of death under the mental illness category. And that says a lot about like the mental tie to food
Mhm,
and intake. So a lot of people can know very well what they're eating is bad for them, but maybe mentally just something hasn't clicked. They have other things to work on. They got to do some
right.
soul searching, right? So I know for you and I, for a fact, have dealt with things like that. And it takes a lot more mental work than
Mindset.
than
Yeah.
you would think. So um, I know that was kind of a off the track, but I feel like
Little
that's just
tangent, but
important to add in. Like
yeah,
this is can be a better option for people, especially if they're consuming a large amount of sugar.
like have the proper education when you are doing this. Just because, again, anything in excess can harm you. So,
Mhm.
in excess of this stuff, and I'm talking about, I think this is pretty like, drastic excess of this stuff can
I
harm
don't
you.
think I really don't think anyone's gonna like
I,
overdose on sucralose.
that's a
That would
lot.
be so much. You'd have to like try really
I
hard.
think you'd start having like GI stress before that.
Yeah, yeah.
But okay.
So so I kind of want to dive into. We have a blog post that we released recently, and it's called "Is Sucralose Genotoxic?" Um, so let's kind of dive into that.
Mhm.
So a recent study conducted at University of North Carolina Chapel Hill investigated the effects of sucralose 6 acetate, or S6A, on DNA and found that chemical constituent byproduct of sucralose could be genotoxic, which means damaging to DNA. The study focused and investigated the chemical compound S6A, which is different than sucralose. It is not the same thing. This study did not investigate sucralose, the non nutritive sweetener, S6A is a chemical compound that is formed during the manufacturing of sucralose. It is removed along with any other impurities during the manufacturing process. So before being used as a sweetener. So they are studying something that isn't even in sucralose by the time it is done being manufactured.
So they're essentially
They're
tapping
not
into the
even studying
process
the
of
right thing.
sucralose. They're taking it before it's even done.
Yeah. And
How is
it
that?
doesn't exist in sucralose when it is ingested.
Oh boy.
So, but I mean, who's going to look that far into studies, right? So this research studies sucralose 6 acetate in isolation, not sucralose as sweetener. So literally, they were like, I don't know, like, let's study EJ. And then they just took me instead and started
Right.
studying me. Like, that's not the same. Or maybe like they, you could think about it in a family aspect, right? So they're like, hey, let's
Mhm.
study Emma. But before they didn't even study me, they studied my mother, who like I have relation to, but she is not me at the end of it, right? So just it's kind of crazy that people are reading into these. Why am I losing? Okay, you know, reading into these studies and not even realizing that the wrong thing is being studied. So the other thing, second, this is was an in vitro study. In Latin, that means in glass. So the term refers to the studies of biological properties that are done in a test tube rather than a human or an animal. So um,
Mm.
in in vitro studies are in contrast to in vivo, which is in life, right? So in vivo would be in humans or
Mhm.
animals. In vitro would be like in a test tube or in glass, right? Um, a major drawback is this of this is their failure to capture the inherent complexity of human beings and our organs and how we work and our biological processes, right? So, for example, in vitro models may not account for interactions between cells, biochemical processes, metabolism, all that stuff. So they literally just put it in a glass tube and they watched it.
Yep.
So,
I
um,
freaking love these studies. I love the fact that people go and they cherry pick
yeah.
into a process to figure out to
Mhm.
find there. It's I bet there's if I looked into this, I bet there's some company that's backing this to want some sort of support with it. So way to go,
Mhm.
University of North Carolina. Love that, guys.
Love
Um,
you guys. You're great.
to find to cherry pick that information and then not even put it in a real life test.
Yeah.
No, you're going to do it in a lab, severely controlled, and say, yo,
And
guys,
they don't,
sucralose is genotoxic.
yeah, and they don't tell you how many times they attempted to do it and they didn't find anything. So
Thank you.
they
This
like, they probably did it like in vivo first and they were like, crap, this is not
yeah,
hurting anyone.
just
Let's
didn't
go to
work.
in vitro. So, um,
Oh man.
I guess going into it, like there's been studies that have, like I talked about, long term, short term in animals and humans, obviously in glass as well. The human clinical trials have shown to have no adverse effects with the use of sucralose as sweetener. Um, the NIH and the NCI have stated that there is not enough evidence to show any link of sucralose to cancer. So it's literally just an outrageous claim that has no backing behind it.
Mhm.
Randomized control trials with humans would show a much different outcome as there are thousands of biological processes and confounding variables unaccounted for. So, like I said, like they literally didn't take into account anything that actually happens inside the body. Um, and then other studies have been shown like not only like damaging to DNA concerns or carcinogenic concerns, but any studies that have talked about like gut dysbiosis and things like things that would affect like the biome in your gut. All of those have been retracted as well. So, um, why do people think that sucralose is bad for gut health? Well, let me tell you. In 2018, there was a 12-week study. I love this. I love telling people what's actually real. This is so exciting. So, in 2008, there was a 12-week study that was conducted on rats. So keep that in mind. Although,
Mhm.
yes, it might be better to have something done in a rat as opposed to glass, right? Because there's at least some sort of, we're a lot more similar to rats than we are to a piece of glass, right? But there's still
Exactly.
not
That's why
a
they
lot
use.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
So
differences.
yeah, this study was posted in the Journal of Toxicology and Environmental Health, where researchers studied the impact of sucralose in the gut microbiome. So this is the one that was like, oh, it's horrible for your gut. The results indicated that the number of healthy gut bacteria and beneficial fecal microflora decreased, and the fecal pH matter increased. Um, so there was also indications that sucralose increased the expression of certain cytochrome enzymes and transporter protein, like the P glycoprotein, which was considered evidence that sucralose or slash Splenda, same thing, interfered with our body's
Mhm.
ability to absorb nutrients and drugs. A year later, literally only a year later, in 2009, an expert panel reviewed the study and found it to be deficient in many areas. The review was published in the Journal of Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology. Um, Literally everything that was stated to be areas of concern in the study was not supported by any data present. Fact of the matter is, sucralose is backed by hundreds of studies which prove that sucralose is safe for use and causes no toxic, harmful effects. So no studies have been designed to obtain proper outcomes through long-term, placebo-controlled, double-blind, randomized controlled trials. So I guess this area specifically, why I wanted to focus on sucralose and why we have blog posts about it is because we have, I think, 3 different products that uses sucralose as a sweetener.
Mhm.
Mind you, sucralose is in the other ingredients, the very last ingredient listed, which means that's the least ingredient used. So it has to go
Yep.
in order of like amount used, right?
Yep. Which, by the
So we
way,
use a
which
very
legally you have
minimal,
to do that.
right? Yeah. So we know that if it's the last one, it's the least amount, right?
Hmm.
We get people. I won't say all the time, but a few times a year, maybe I'll have someone be like, "Well, it has sucralose." Like I've had people like yell in my face, like it's a chemical, like freaking out. It's a plant chemical, so it's not actually that bad. But it's like, people just don't actually. They like read something on Instagram about how horrible sucralose is for you, and then they freak out. I'm not going to put myself on a pedestal here and say I've never done that. I probably do that every day. Um, but there are options. There are better things. We can kind of talk at the very end of like what other routes to go if you don't feel comfortable using um, sweetener, you know, other sweeteners. So
The substitutes. Yeah.
substitute sweetener, yeah. So, but I just like this topic because when you actually dive into it, there is no data supporting
No
any of their claims.
substantial
Yeah,
research.
yeah,
There's no, like,
no,
there's articles and there's people like we just talked about who have
a
cherry
ton.
picked,
Yeah,
who have super controlled, who have manipulated the results to get the result that they want. It's probably again because they have someone, and I'm doing this on the some like one of the ones that you mentioned about looking back and see who uh, is backing the study, because studies cost money. So who's going to support it? And if it's some company or some group that wants a specific result or are looking for a specific result, they sometimes can, depending on how much money they want to dump out
yeah.
to get that result.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, and
again, that's a
there's
tangent. Kind of,
no, I love it because there are. I do kind of have a tinfoil hat when it comes to certain things, and certain things just make the tinfoil hat like start freaking out, right? So a big thing is like if you just walk into the grocery store and look into like what companies own certain products, the same 2 companies have a large amount of stock in pretty much anything you'll find on a grocery store shelf. So it just makes you think
mhm.
like who is controlling these studies, but also like how easy is it if they're doing it in something like this, like how many other things have they done it to that we're suddenly
Mhm.
terrified of, like, right, like, oh, eat steak, instead of eating red meat because that's horrible for you, you guys need to eat Fruit Loops. We all know. We all know who we're talking about. Was it Fruit Loops? Sugar, cereal, same thing.
Yeah.
So, um, it's just interesting to think about like, okay, it's obviously not that hard for them to cherry pick and find evidence that they want to find. So how many other things have they done this to? What was a sweetener recently that they? Oh, I should have added this to my notes. I'm gonna have to look. They like vilified it recently all over. They named it as like a level 3 carcinogenic. Let me look it up. Pause. Quick pause. I know someone just posted about it and it was very good information. Aspartame.
Oh, aspartame's been around a long time. Look at your Diet Coke. Look at your Diet Coke. You know what's oh man, that gets into another thing. Aspartame's also not only like
I'll send this to you,
you'll
EJ.
see that in like a Diet Coke, there'll be a smaller amount of caffeine because caffeine, believe it or not, will change the flavor profile of a drink. You can taste it in coffee. You can taste it in like a Diet Coke that's caffeine or caffeine free. You see people have. I should have grabbed one of my diet drinks and brought it up here and could
You're
have
like,
just
look,
ah. Um, they'll if you remove caffeine, a lot of times they will increase the amount of aspartame that's in it to simulate or match the profile of the sweetness of it. Or you could see an increase in sucralose. But again, people go, oh, I don't want caffeine. And then they go, oh, aspartame. And now they're, oh, sucralose. I'm like, well,
it
just
just never ends.
guess you should just stop living
Just
because
live on air at this point. Yeah, this I sent it to you, EJ. You could look through it. Maybe you can share it with anyone interested. Um,
yeah, thank you.
but it's it was classified as a group 2B, which means it's possibly carcinogenic to humans.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
what is the acceptable daily intake of aspartame? 40 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. An average adult weighing 70 kilograms or 154 pounds can safely consume roughly 2,800 milligrams of aspartame per day, or around 18 diet sodas per day. So a
Can
lot of the science is like
safely.
safely.
Okay.
But I
So tell
think,
me how many people are
but
drinking
I don't know if you can see this.
a 12 pack of diet drinks every day.
Just like anything.
What's that
Oh
say?
no, it's going away. Hold on. Let me turn my light off.
Aspartame.
Is that helping? That made it worse.
Well, that made it worse. Aspartame is something. Y'all look on Instagram.
Safe,
Instagram.
safe
You
in
sent me.
moderation, just like anything else.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
EJ, you're gonna have to share it.
exactly.
Um, but
Yeah, I'm gonna read
that's
into
another
that.
tangent. But I'm bummed I kind of forgot to add that to my notes. But it was super helpful. I feel like it kind of blew up and then disappeared because I swear the world was on fire lately, literally and figuratively.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those things that just like everyone freaked out about it for like a week and then everyone forgot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the WHO, World Health Organization, added them as a group 2B carcinogenic.
Group 2B.
Yeah. So
Nice. Nice.
so let's talk
Well, that'll
about
be fun.
the sweetener that we actually do want to avoid. Acesulfame potassium, or ACE-K, is what they call it. It's like the rapper name of the sweetener. So it was discovered in 1967 by a German scientist. I'm not even going to try to say his name. No, just be horrible.
Um,
So ACE-K is I did put the link to this if you want to share that as well in our notes. But ACE-K is a
yeah.
potassium salt often used in combination with other low or no calorie sweeteners. So it is usually binded with something else. Due to its bitter aftertastes, it needs to be kind of provided or binded to like another more sweeter sugar like sweetener. So it's usually added to things like Equal, Swiss One, Swiss Sweet, and NutraSweet. And I can't tell you how many times I've used, not recently, but I've used like an equal no calorie sweetener packet like Starbucks in my
Hmm.
coffee, right? So it's kind of crazy to
Absolutely.
hear that. Um, it is intensely sweet and added to many baked goods, beverages, packaged products, um, drinks, things like that. It's often overlooked by consumers, and I totally would be the first to tell you, like, I've never even heard of this. So, but it is recognized to be safe to consume by the FDA since 1988, which
Hmm.
is interesting because
Hmm.
there is a lot of danger. So studies show that ACE-K can impose potential negative effects on human health. A lot of the things that they're pretty much saying that sucralose does, ACE-K is another area. So gut dysbiosis, metabolic syndrome, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. So ACE-K increases the expression of inflammatory cytokines and decreased expression of glucagon, certain receptors. That's a lot of science. But GLP-1R and GLP-2R. So
Glucagon receptors.
yeah, those. I feel like it's just so much science. I don't want to just be spitting it out, but sciencey words. So it induced small intestinal injury and increased intestinal permeability. So GLP-1R is a receptor protein found on beta cells of the pancreas and neurons of the brain, which is not great if a sweetener is affecting protein receptors on neurons in the brain. That's a little worrisome. So it's
Hmm.
involved in controlling blood sugar levels by enhancing insulin secretion. So it can disrupt the metabolic process, interfere with gut permeability, blood sugar, and body weight. So it's also been found to have like neurometabolic effects, a decrease in intracellular ATP production, reduced cellular viability, and protective activity of neuronal cells affecting neurocognitive function. So that being said, um, I think the area that kind of freaks people out is the like neurological functioning that it affects. So
Mm.
the acceptable ACE-K intake per day is 15 milligrams per day. Um, Looking back to what did I say about aspartame? That was like 40 milligrams per day.
Yeah.
So it's
Uh,
quite small.
hmm.
I'm assuming maybe because it's not as common. Um,
Maybe. I don't have that much knowledge when it comes to Ace K because this was the
yeah, I
first time
really
that
don't
I
know
really
much.
heard about this. This was
Yeah,
not really when I got my certification. This was not
on it. And I
involved.
think that's why
Yeah.
the intake is much lower. There's probably not as many things containing ACE-K. But I
Hmm.
wouldn't be surprised if you just go into like the junk food aisle at the store, you probably could find dozens of things with ACE-K in it. Um, so let's kind of talk about what we could do
It
instead
was. Yeah.
of
I got
using. So things that don't
Go
have
ahead. Yeah,
ACE-K
you're good.
in it: stevia, monk fruit, sucralose, or Splenda. Or if you just want to avoid sweetener substitutions at all costs, if you're just convinced that it'll kill you, right? You can use honey, you can use maple syrup, you can use coconut sugar, and you can use regular cane sugar. Honey and maple syrup and cane sugar might be the areas that are like if you don't really care as much about caloric consumption, right? But I don't know much about coconut sugar. Never use that, so I should look into that. I'm kind of interested.
It's heavy. Tends to be kind of like a blend. A lot of people use it because it can like be a
Binder.
no, I did it with my hands.
I know. I was like, that's what I did when I was talking about xanthan gum earlier. I was like,
Uh, it can be. It's not like regular sugar, and it's not or like white sugar, and it's not brown sugar. It's kind of like in the middle. So
interesting.
it's definitely darker in color, and some people say it's a little bit. It can has a tendency towards brown sugar, but it's like
Okay.
on a spectrum.
Interesting. Okay. I feel like if I wanted to just avoid it at all costs, monk fruit is just a great,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, sure, I guess it's a art of, or sweetener substitution or whatever, but like I feel like monk fruit, like I said earlier before that we went live, house, like there's not a lot of data or like, bad things on social media about it yet. But at some point, it will be vilified. I know for a fact because
Yeah.
everything is. And then once you actually do your research and learn for yourself, you realize things won't kill you like they say they will. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of people I see don't use as much monk fruit like extract or sweeteners because it's not as sweet. I think it's like
yeah,
it's like just under 200 times as sweet.
yeah.
Um, it's not really like the FDA hasn't even classified like what's a safe intake for it.
Because it's probably
And
so. I think
it's
that's just
not as
what it comes
studied.
down to. It's like no one is having the maximal dose or more repeatedly for many, many years over a long period of time, also mixed with poor lifestyle, diet, and mental health situations. But like, I just feel like the chances of that are so low. But they
Mm.
have managed to find the people that maybe do have that,
Yeah.
or they had something else that was an issue, right? Maybe they
Yep.
had, a sensitivity to something or whatever, and they were still eating or drinking that every single day, and then they died and they were like, aha, like
Yeah.
that person, yeah, don't, never mind, they were 300 pounds overweight and they had
Right.
30 Diet Cokes a day.
Mm-hmm.
They died from aspartame. It's
Yes.
like,
That's it.
no, that's not
Shit. Nailed it.
nailed it, done.
Yeah. It's
So
like,
just
yeah.
going back
Like,
to that, like, who knows what they're picking and choosing and when they write those
yeah, that
studies.
kind of gets into the study I talked about earlier, the one that was from like San Antonio.
Yeah.
Granted, they had like over 5,000 people, probably a breadth of demographic. Granted, it was isolated to San Antonio, but I'm sure it's a wide demographic
Yeah.
there. Um, it was over almost a 10-year span where they measured, and like 75% of them either survived the study or they just finished it. They just decided not to continue with it. 25% of them did. I'm gonna go with that one. It's kind of morbid. The other thought,
They
um,
all died.
died,
I'm
and
sure
it's
it's a
from
mix.
sucralose.
You never know.
Yeah,
Sure, it's a
but
mix.
this study associated artificial sweeteners uh, with obesity. Okay, did that study didn't hit my mic? That study didn't
We're
dive
getting
as
passionate here.
yeah, the study didn't dive really into like their lifestyle
Yeah.
choices. Like, are these people? Is this the person that weighs 350 pounds has a diet coke, a big gulp every single day, and they also get they eat out for 1 or 2 meals every other
Hmm.
day or every day even. Or
Well,
is it the average Joe
and
that might have a sensitivity to this stuff? You don't know.
yeah, and a lot of these problems too can be genetic.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way, and yeah, obesity is not genetic in my book, right? But the tendency to be obese can be genetic, right? In terms of like, if your parents and your aunts and your uncles and your cousins and your grandpa and your grandma are all overweight, chances are higher that you will adopt
Mm-hmm.
the same habits and also be overweight. That does not mean you are going to, but I just,
But there's a chance.
yeah, and you
Yeah.
can look at studies and be like, well, you don't really know everything, and it's never gonna, you're never gonna find a study that's always gonna have every little thing that's accounted for. But at the end of the
Right.
day, you want to rely on studies that do have some merit to them. Um, and sadly, like the woman that wrote um, released the study from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, like she literally just wanted clout. She wanted to release something. She wanted to get on the front
Nice.
page, and
Well, yeah, I mean
she
that's
did it,
attention
I
grabber
guess.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
you wanna cause damage to your DNA, So, yeah, all in all, I get really passionate about this subject because I just feel like there's not a lot of open knowledge about it. Um,
mhm.
and I know for
And
a fact,
definitely
like
gets,
finding reliable studies and trials that don't sound like gibberish is really hard. So I really hope people find value in this. Yeah, it's a long episode, but maybe they'll just listen to it and enjoy the conversation and just learn
yeah.
from it without being like, oh, I have to figure out how to find clinical trials and studies and that I rely on
Mhm.
and can read without being like, what? Like, what are they saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
The one caveat I'd say to like the people are wanting to look for alternatives like that monk fruit and stevia.
Hmm.
Monk fruit, like there's a really good brand that you always find at Lakanto, I think. They have like syrups, like brown sugar, white sugar of and it's all monk fruit. It tends to be on the more expensive side, but it's good stuff. I've had it before.
Okay.
Um, no product placement, not sponsored. Uh, but then also when it comes to stevia, if you really want to stick away from sucralose, check the packaging because there are quite a bit of brands out there that will say stevia. You look on the back ingredient list, first ingredient is sucralose, and then stevia's in there.
Ah.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I didn't know that. That doesn't surprise me though.
They only have to put
So,
so much in there for it to be qualified as a stevia sweetener. Well,
yeah. Okay.
stevia is only like 300 times as sweet, so they'll pack in some
So,
sucralose.
Sugar, let's help it out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that being said, too, I think we do have three. Is it three or two? I can't remember. Three or two, something like that. Products that do have sucralose in it. We have like maybe four or less products that have stevia in it, and then everything else
Mhm.
is like monk fruit or nothing, right? So I just feel like a lot of people who get nervous or whatever, and they're talking to me like, I don't really know. Like there are a lot of other options, um, and also like I don't. I think there's a little bit of room to consume everything at a moderate or small amount, right? We also don't want to be having a bunch of cane sugar either. So like, yeah, you might be all against sugar substitutes, but like a bunch of cane sugar isn't great, or a
Mm-mm.
bunch of honey, or so just keep that in mind. Like, yeah, the more natural routes are helpful, but if you're worried, but at the same time, there's a lot of studies of what sugar and overconsumption of sugar can do to you.
Yep.
So, especially if you have insulin issues or blood sugar issues or diabetes or anything like that. So,
Yep.
um, yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of my. This episode was way longer, but I feel like we got
Yeah,
really passionate about
we
it.
did.
We
It's
always
something
say
that
that
is
every week. We're
yeah.
like, we're so excited.
It'll be like 20 minutes, 15
Yeah.
minutes, and three times as long. But it's something that is this topic is very hot these days, and artificial sweeteners are something that it's a big debate, and it's something that has been a bit vilified.
Mhm.
Um, and so is sugar, like regular sugar as well, has been pretty vilified as well. But everything in moderation can uh, be sustainable and be healthy, except for meth. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
um, but I can't wait for our next episode. We've got a ton of topics that are stirring between the two of us, and we really appreciate you guys taking the time
Riding around up
to,
here.
to jump in and watch the show today. Obviously, it'll be on our YouTube channel, and as well as you're on our Facebook group, it'll be there. But if you got nothing else, um, appreciate you guys and take care. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.